Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Sir Charles, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I'd like to thank all colleagues who've contributed, but particularly the chair of the Select Committee, for bringing forward this debate, which, as we've heard from all of the serious questions asked, is very important. The Minister has quite a number of questions to answer that are important, so I will try to be swift, Sir Charles. But I think it is clear from this debate that what we all want on all sides of the House is for parents to meet their responsibilities and pay what their child needs. No ifs, no buts, just to get it done. And we know from Gingerbread, who many have mentioned, that 60% of children of single parents not benefiting from child maintenance could be lifted out of poverty if that support were paid in full. And that's why we want to get this sorted. The current situation is just not acceptable, which was why it was good, if a little tardy, that we finally got to the point recently of the government removing the fee for the service, after many people warning for a number of years that that would remove its effectiveness. And listening to colleagues, Sir Charles, it does strike me that it would be helpful if the government could provide a timeline or even a working update to help colleagues know which improvements to CMS they're currently making and what the status of those improvements are. I think there's 3 areas where the government could do this that would help us: on issues relating to domestic abuse, on issues relating to customer service, and I think particularly of the contribution made by the member for Amber Valley about the complexity of calculations. It can't be beyond us to have clarity and be able to inform citizens of the information the government has on their behalf. And on enforcement, again, members have made it absolutely clear how long we've been trying to get enforcement improved. And I think just having a working update from the government as to where we are on that would really help colleagues. So I'd like the Minister to consider that. When he and I last met across dispatch boxes, I had some questions about research that the government were undertaking, and the Minister was kind enough to write to me on the 21st of February to say that Ipsos are commissioned currently to research direct pay customers. This is really helpful. We really need to understand what's going on for parents. So if he could say a bit more about when that will be published, that would be really useful. In that letter, he also mentioned to me a particular tool that DWP have developed, which I think gives us some hope in this area, because members have rightly expressed frustration, distress, listening to some of the cases, the people who've dealt with having a wrong calculation that they knew. The person that the chair of the Select Committee mentioned at the beginning of his speech, the dad who'd lost a son. You know, these are really heartbreaking issues, but I think that there is some hope in the letter that the Minister sent to me when he mentioned the Get Help Arranging Child Maintenance tool that had been developed for unbiased advice and support, designed to be convenient for parents and to support people into the most suitable arrangements for their circumstances. And I would like to ask the Minister what lessons DWP have drawn from the development of that tool, because listening to the contributions of colleagues, it strikes me that if we could have a focus also on early advice, help and support, so that people knew at a very distressing time of relationship breakdown what the best steps were for them, that seems to me to be hopeful and point to a better direction. So I'd be grateful if the Minister could say what lessons DWP are drawing from the development of that tool. And Sir Charles, I said I was going to be swift, and I will be. I will just sum up by making 3 very brief points that I think we can all agree with. In the end, I will, if you'd like to.
Right. Yeah, there could be a change of government by the end of the year, and I welcome the warm words, and she may go on to describe specific policy pledges. But I'd like to actually hear specific policy goals that they have in mind. For example, do you support the introduction of home curfews? And rather just warm words, what are you actually going to do differently should you end up in government? My apologies. Sorry.
Thank you, Sir Charles, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. And I would just say to him, not a single vote in an election has been cast yet. So he may have said could, but I am not the minister, and I wouldn't be so arrogant to assume that that will be certain to happen. So my aim was to try and leave space for questions to be directed to the minister to assist colleagues. But I would simply say to him, I mean, I could point to the record over the past 14 years on a number of occasions where Labour spokespeople have called for the removal of the fee, stronger enforcement, some of which, including the issue of the fee, the government have now done, which is good. However, as I've been saying, we all know that there are a range of improvements that need to be made, and I would think that we would all find it helpful if the government could undertake to regularly update us through the Select Committee, if necessary, on what is happening. But as I was saying, Sir Charles, the children's needs, we all know, must come first. And members have described the pain that parents experience in this system, which affects children very, very deeply. And that's why this really matters to us all. The second point that I think is uncontroversial is that the service also has to react to some complex realities of life. And one of those realities is the power dynamic in a relationship. Anyone can find themselves to be a victim of domestic abuse. But unfortunately, domestic abuse does tend to work through lines of the imbalance in power between men and women in our country. And this then implies, this then leads us to a heightened concern about how domestic abuse is handled within the system. And I hope that the service will hear that concern. And finally, I do want to end on a hopeful note, because I felt in the minister's letter to me, whilst there has been deep dissatisfaction, there were some signs that the civil service is working hard to improve the quality of service for all parents. And if we can do that early, we can avoid some of the deeply distressing situations that members have described today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shadow Minister.